Okay. Oh,
So just letting
oh,
you
great.
Okay. Do you guys want to start with kind of an introduction for other people you might send it to, or?
Sure. So for Erica and everyone that's joining us and anyone I'm sending this to, I'm Miranda, a part of the Pollen team with Keller Williams Real Estate. And I have my sister here, Jen Pollen. She is. So we're just bringing you another monthly seminar, which is where we talk about different things in the industry. This one is focused on move up buyers. So those that are already currently own a home that are thinking about purchasing their next home, really just talking over the process, talking about what it means to move equity, contingencies, and a little bit about what's happening in the market. So Greg, thank you so much for hosting this with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. So I am Greg Roth with Cross Country Mortgage. I have been in residential lending since 2009, mostly in Pennsylvania, but I do Jersey, Maryland, Delaware. I've lived in South Philly, Point Breeze Grad Hospital, and I was a move-up buyer a couple of years ago myself, and I am now out in Newtown in Bucks County. So I know all the pains and tribulations you go through to find that potential next home or forever home. So I'm going to share my screen here and go over some stuff that's going on in the market and stuff that might be able to help. And Jen, Miranda, please jump in at any time if you want to talk about any of the material. All right. So first, we're going to kind of go over the challenges we face in the market right now. It's been a real roller coaster ride since the housing bubble of 2008 to, low rates to COVID and, the high rate market we've kind of faced now and low inventory. So the reluctance of the move up buyer right now is to give up that low rate. We pretty much had rates in the threes from like 2012 until, COVID hit when they went somehow even lower, which was wild. There were some spurts where they maybe shot up to 4 or 5% in that interim, but they were short lived. And now we're in an interest environment where we're waiting for rates to come down. A lot of people think that they're going to come down a lot. They did last year and they waited. And you know what? Rates are finally coming down. They're predicted to be around 5% by the end of this year. I guess maybe around 6% sometime around this summer will probably be the norm. Hopefully, it moves faster than that. It'll depend what the Fed does. A lot of other people are waiting for housing prices to come down, which in my opinion is not going to happen anytime soon. And I'll explain that further in the presentation. It has a lot to do with homes just being vastly underbuilt in the last several years. And a lot of people weren't selling homes either because they didn't want to give up that low rate, cut down on inventory. It's really just all coming down to the basic supply and demand for economics here. A lot of people waiting for both rates and housing to come down are going to be waiting for a long time. And the big thing is there's going to be a hesitancy for buyers to pay over ask like we saw in COVID. There are going to be bidding wars again. There's going to be competition. I'm going to show you some things during this presentation of why it makes sense to pay over asking if you're going to be in the home in a while, or why it might make sense. So I kind of already touched on that it was a tale of two markets. The higher rate, low inventory is kind of what we're in now and starting to come out of. And the lower rate, low inventory is where we're about to head into. The key being low inventory. That, again, is not going to change. We are very far underbuilt. And for every 1% that interest rates drop, 5 million more people become qualified for that home. So, you're going to have a lot more people at those open houses again. You're going to have lines around the door. So kind of strike when the iron's hot if you can and get there before the floodgates open. This is Diana Olick. She is a real estate correspondent and, in my opinion, often wrong. But she has a very good platform on CNBC, has good following. But she's been preaching for years that housing prices are going down, that we're going to have another housing bubble. And it couldn't be further from the truth. She follows a metric called the median home price. And this is just to really show you that the media often is spreading, false propaganda about what the housing market's doing. A lot of times they're a week or two behind on interest rates. They'll say rates went down. They actually went up that week. They went up. They actually went down that week. We follow kind of live day-to-day data to kind of tell you what's really going on. But in her example, she used 363 as a median home price and said home prices are going down because the median home price just dropped to 361. Not necessarily the case. Median home price means that 50% of the homes that sold were over 363, 50% were under. You could just have a market where a lot of people are buying lower priced homes. It doesn't mean that they're not appreciating. You could have a $200,000 home in that market that's sold, but it was only listed at 170, and it could still be appreciating. So if you look further into the data, there's an economist named Barry Habib, and he is incredible. He's won the Crystal Ball Award for economics and kind of forecasting what's going on with the real estate market several years in a row. And he went further into this data to show in most of these markets where she predicted the median price was going down, home appreciation was actually going up. So just double check the sources, the media, talk to your real estate consultants, Jen, Miranda, they know what's going on in your local market. They can tell you if things are going up or not. Anything to add on that, guys?
No, I mean, it really just, looking at when it comes to the median home price, yeah, prices are definitely not going down. And even in markets like Philadelphia market, where we don't have as much movement, they're still appreciating at a minimum of 4% year over year. And during the peaks of like 2020, 2021, 2022, we saw appreciations 9 to 12% in the metropolitan area. So homes will continue to appreciate and go up. And if you're waiting for them to come down, you're going to be waiting a very long time for a house.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there's always going to be certain little pockets where maybe you get a deal the right time of year in the winter if stuff's not selling. But overall, homes are still appreciating. Like I said, Philly's not moving as much. It's going to pretty soon. And the suburbs have not slowed down. And this slide kind of helps emphasize that point. It's called Betting Against the Champ. It's probably my favorite slide in the whole presentation, showing since 1941 that homes have appreciated 73 times. They've only gone down 7 times and stayed stagnant once. I think that's more of like a kind of a rounding thing. And I got to try and hide my face here so I can see the whole slide. There we go. All right. So to kind of make this even sillier as far as the numbers, it's only gone down 7 times. 5 of those times were right here, 2007 to 2011, during the housing bubble, which was an anomaly. At that time in the mortgage lending world, if you could fog up a mirror, you could get a loan. You could come in and say, I'm an origami. I make origami swans. I make $100,000 a year, and I want to buy this $1 million home. And we'd be like, okay, that checks out. And then, maybe the home's only worth 800,000, but we were allowed to talk to appraisers back then. And we might tell the appraiser, this home needs to pay, appraise for $1 million. Okay, because we wouldn't send them more deals if not. When I say we, it was not me. I was in the industry in 2009. But there's a lot more checks and balances to kind of mitigate that now, where it can never happen again. The ability to repay means we need to check your income, your debts, and make sure that you can qualify for the home based on certain ratios. For appraisals, we can't talk to appraisers anymore. It's got to go through a management company. And then those appraisals get checked against Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac data to make sure they're compliant. And if something looks wrong, they have to defend their appraised value, whether it's too high or too low. So I don't think we're ever going to see an issue where we have a housing bubble like that again. And as you can see, if homes just continue to appreciate through COVID was absolutely insane. And that's just a spark of the bidding wars that we saw and why prices went up so much. So to get into it a little bit further, let's see if we can fix this now. There we go. All right. So in 2007, during that housing bubble, there was 4 million homes for sale. Then we look at 2023, there was only about 1 million homes for sale. It's a big contrast, 3 million units. That's crazy. So then we go further into the numbers and show that 466,000 of that million were actually already under contract to be sold. That left you about 600,000 homes for sale in the country at a given time during 2023. That's why you saw the bidding wars. That's why it's what's crazy. But how do we get there? Like, why did that happen? If we look at US births by year, they say that the average household formation is when someone turns 33. They usually maybe have a family, get together, maybe move from their first home, or maybe it is the first home, or into a second home, forever home. So in 2006, that would have meant you were born in 1973. That's right when the housing bubble hit. And look how the birth rates went down. And not to be political, Roe v. Wade came out around the same time. And that makes sense. With abortion, birth rates went down. And when we hit here in 2006 in the housing bubble, we had less people looking for homes, not to mention that the market was getting worse and people were underwater because of the appraised values and arm loans and sorts of stuff like that. And there was too many homes for sale. So the builders pulled back big time. And then here we are in 2023, where the people born in 1990, the birth rates are super high again, and the builders didn't catch up. So now we have 4 million people looking for homes and only 1 million homes for sale. So just by looking at that, you can tell it's going to be a long time before the builders catch up and kind of even out where it starts to become a buyer's market again. And other things kind of played into that with COVID. You know, inflation really caused lumber and materials and other stuff for building to go through the roof, that your small builders couldn't compete anymore. And the big builders stayed on the sidelines because the Fed fund rate really directly impacted their financing and their lines of credit and what it cost them and their profit lines. And that's a big thing. People always hear the Fed fund rate. The Fed raised rates, they cut rates. That's not a direct correlation to your 30-year mortgage. If the Fed just raised or cut rates 0.5 point, that doesn't mean your rate went from 7 to 6.5. It depends how the market perceives that action and what's behind it. Maybe your rate did go down 1/8 point or 1/4, but it's not a 1-for-1. It usually is just the news that kind of helps the market move and what the 30-year does. Guys, anything to chime in on before I go to the next slide? All right, we're doing good. All right, so I love this one too. This is the cost of waiting. And this is showing why it makes sense to buy a home right now versus waiting 1, 2, 3 years. And this is based on Philadelphia. I can easily make these for other counties, other areas, different price points if anyone wants something like that. This shows that for a loan today at 7%, if you're buying at $300,000 with 20% down, you would need about $75,000. You can obviously put less down than that. You can put down 5% if you want. And a 7% rate, your payment would be $19.47 a month, including taxes and insurance. If you wait 1 year, that same property at a 3% appreciation is now worth $310,000. So now you're paying $77,000 out of pocket for it. Your rate went down to 6%, which is great, but it only lowered your payment about $110 a month. So you're paying $2,000 more for a payment that's only $110 less a month. And then if you go further, the payment doesn't get that much better, actually. It actually goes up a little bit in this case, because now that same home in 2 years costs $318,000. And this is just based on regular appreciation in Philadelphia. Other counties could be more. And this shows more that same property in 1 year, it's not just the payment that you're looking at. You've lost $10,000 in appreciation, and amortization means paying down your loan balance. You would have paid it down by $2,400. So in that 1 year, you lost $12,000 essentially in equity in your home by waiting, even though the rates are high. And this doesn't take into account what would happen if you refinance to a lower rate during that time frame. I mean, 2 years, $23,000, $34,000. Whenever people ask me when's the right time to buy a home, the answer is always today. So let's get into some of the real fun stuff here in terms of what we can do to kind of help qualify for a new home, how to lower your debt ratios, how do we make that work? Step one is it's never too early to get pre-approved. It's never too early to talk with your realtor and your mortgage professional. You can come up with a game plan. Maybe you don't even have to do any of this stuff. Maybe your income's in great shape. Maybe your debts are low. That's awesome. But at least you know exactly what you need to do to make your best offer. So like I said, you find out if it's necessary to pay down any debts or not. And a lot of this stuff you want to do 30, 60, 90 days before you're going to look for a home so that it hits the credit reports, so that an underwriter doesn't see you moving money around and shifting things. Does a cash out refinance make sense? I know it might seem crazy to give up a 3% rate for a 6%, but if you have a lot of debt and you have maybe like a year that you're waiting to buy, you can pay off all that debt and you can increase your credit score by doing so, make your debt ratios lower for when you want to buy and put yourself in a better position. There's zero interest transfer balance cards where, hey, maybe you have a high interest rate, 24% on your card, and your minimum monthly payment's $200. If you could transfer that whole thing to a zero interest card, the payment might be $25 a month. That's going to lower your debt ratios. Refinancing or trading in cars for lower payments, pretty self-explanatory, but that's big too. Does it make sense to explore renting out your current home to offset that debt? By doing this, you can potentially buy your new home without a home sale contingency, which makes Miranda and Jen very happy and makes the seller happy and increases your odds of getting that home. And I'm going to touch on this again in the next slide because that's a pretty popular one. you can apply with your apply without your partner. If one of you is tied to the current home and the other one's not, and you qualify on your own, do it. That's a good way to maybe get another first-time homebuyer grant potentially, and not have all that debt. And your partner can still be on the deed and title and have ownership to the new home while you wait to sell the other one. You can move debt into your partner's name if you want to get really crafty. Have someone refinance the car into their name that's not going to be on the loan, pay off a credit card, stuff like that. So there are certain ways and strategies that you can kind of get into to remove debt if that's going to, impede you from getting the house you want. Like I said, this is the next slide, renting out your departing residence from what I touched on before. The rules changed a little bit, but it's still pretty easy to do. If you've never been a landlord before, meaning you haven't had a rental property, you can put a lease in place. Someone's got to move in within 60 days of closing on your new home. You can use 75% of that rent of that lease amount to offset your current mortgage payment. The rule change that just happened is if you're not a landlord prior, it can't exceed the mortgage payment. You can't use extra income to help you qualify. But still, if you have $1,000 on a lease, you can use $750 of that to offset your current mortgage payment and potentially, lower your debt ratios and qualify. What they're looking for you to do now is get a lease in place and a rent schedule from an appraiser showing that the rents on the lease kind of makes sense and it's not just, something you made up. But you can get around that if you have the lease and 2 months rent received or 1 month rent and security deposit. I've seen people rent their homes to their family, to their friends. And as long as you have a lease and you have this in place, it all checks out. So it is a way to go. If you've been a landlord before, same rules apply as far as getting, the security deposit, 1 month rent, but you can use the overage income on the lease, which is kind of nice. So a lot of properties you can rent for a lot more than the mortgage payment was, especially if you were at 2-3%. What are some ways to free up cash for the new purchase? So, even if you're not a first-time home buyer, most people don't realize you can put 5% down. So that's the first thing. When you sell your home, you could do something called a recast, where you put all the proceeds toward the loan balance to lower it. Only costs you like $200 to do that. And the rate stays the same, but the balance and the payment change. You could always refinance later when you sell your home and put more money down at that point. But it is certainly attainable to have both at the same time. The home sale contingency, do you guys want to expand on that one a little bit? What that means and why it's not a great tool?
Jenny, you want me to go?
So for the home sale contingency, there's a difference between selling a home and just going to settlement. So for people that definitely want to sell their home to buy their new home, what Miranda and I like to do is, before we take you out shopping, is get a pre-listing home inspection, get the property on the market, get under contract, and through all of the contingencies on that property, so that when we go out shopping for the new home, it's not a sale contingency, it's only a settlement contingency. So it's still better to have no contingency. And that's truly what any seller in today's market wants. The less contingencies, the less probability of the transaction not coming together is really what they're banking on. So if somebody was to use one of Greg's methods to go ahead and not have that contingency, that's a stronger buyer for any seller looking to sell their home. So that's why we really don't love having any kind of contingencies, because it's so competitive and, there's just not enough inventory. We're trying to, make you the strongest buyer in today's market.
Exactly. Yeah, when I first got in the business, the contingency was actually pretty standard and it was easy. But again, there was a lot of homes for sale, so it was a buyer's market. That is not the case anymore. And it's not to say you can't make it happen if that's the only option. But Jen and Miranda would be your best resource for that based on the market you're looking at. Gift funds, a lot of people don't realize that you can get gift funds. It doesn't just have to be your first home. It could be your second home, your third home. Family, can always help out with that. And, gift funds are not supposed to be repaid, but what you do with your parents 2-3 years down the road, like no one's knocking on your door if your mortgage is paid on time. Credit card cash advances. I mean, I don't love that idea, but if we're trying to talk about creative ways to free up cash, it can work. Let's say you have a really high credit limit and you can take out $20,000. Do it, 90 days before you're looking to put an offer on a home. And the underwriter only looks at 60 days worth of bank statements. It's going to look like it's seasoned. It's going to look like it's your money. If they see that it was during those 60 days, they will not allow you to use it because you can't take out a credit card loan for a loan that's not secured against anything. But it's a good way to get some cash out if it's just for down payment. And if your plan is to sell your home later, you're just paying it off. So you're not carrying that high interest rate for very long. Bridge loan. That's a pretty popular one. That's at least the buzzword out there. What people do is if your home is currently under contract or about to be under contract, that will vary on how much you can take from the bridge loan. But it's essentially equity from your current home. And it is another mortgage that goes into place. It's temporary. You are supposed to pay it off in a pretty short period of time, or there could potentially be penalties. You have to do an appraisal again on it, and there are sometimes more fees, but it is an option that I've had people use before that does work to free up some cash. Personally, I like the next option more, which is a home equity loan or HELOC. If you tap into your current home, you can get the money a lot faster. There's typically a lot less fees. If you go to your credit union or local bank, or they're typically take about 30 to 45 days to process a HELOC. And they are probably not going to give it to you if your current home is already listed. So I do have a product that's fairly new that I've had a few people use. It's pretty great. It's a completely automated home equity line of credit system. You go in, you figure out if you qualify or not. And I'm still tied to it to help out if you need it, but you can go up to 85% of your home's value, and you can close this thing in like 5 days, and you can have your money, and it gives you the rates and a couple options you can pick from. And yeah, the rates are maybe a little higher, 9.5%, 10%, depending on what you pick. But the goal still being that you sell your home and you pay it off pretty quickly. So it's just a lot quicker, easier than a bridge loan, and you can still pay it off. All right, so getting a little more technical on this part of it is just, again, showing where things went during the last couple of years. So it's called less savings, more debt. The top graph being your personal savings rate. So you can see it was pretty stagnant, maybe increased a little bit from 2018 to 2020. And then all of a sudden COVID hit, boom. People started saving, people got scared. They didn't want to spend money. Credit card rates typically, creep up a little bit until something happened. And then all of a sudden what happened? The savings rate went up. People had all this extra money to pay down their debts. They weren't going anywhere. They weren't spending money on anything else. It makes sense. And then here's the first spike, stimulus number one, stimulus number two. Credit card debt went down dramatically. And then things opened back up. And we saw the saving rate go down. People are spending money again. Credit card rates going up and up and up. As inflation, people want to keep cash on hand. They're using the credit cards to kind of leverage themselves. Average car payments during this inflationary period are up to $800. It's crazy. And 17% of car loans are over $1,000. And the average car term went from 4 years to 6 years. So if you have friends, you have family, tell them to get pre-approved before they buy that new car, before they take that out, because I've seen it impede what people want on a huge scale. It happens all the time. So this is the average loan to value of homes over the past, roughly decade, slightly more. And loan to value, again, is your appraised value, what your home is worth, divided by your loan amount. So you can see back in 2008, right after the housing bubble, the average home, or 75% of them, only had about 19% equity in them, not a ton. And you can see all of a sudden the equity is increasing. People have low rates. They're selling less. Here we are in 2022. The average loan to value is 42%, meaning people have 60% equity in their home. So across the country, they say that's $231,000 in equity. If you were to do a cash out refinance, we don't give you that full amount. There's some fees, other stuff. You can get about $185 for the average home out there, which is just crazy. But most people are afraid to do that because they're sitting on that 3% rate. But a lot of these people, based on that credit card stuff, they have debt. And if you have debt, do you really have a 3% rate? Sure, your mortgage, $343 is your loan balance. You have a 3% rate, but you have 20 grand on Visa, 20 on MasterCard, more on Discover, Macy's, Nordstrom, all at 20% rates. Those credit cards are nuts right now. So you have a $411,000 loan amount, but your true blended rate when you average them together is over 6%. So do you really have a 3% rate, or should you try and get rid of that debt if you're going to get a new home later? And if you truly think rates are going to go down further? And this isn't talking about a cash out refinance. This is talking about your debt consolidation. If you are going to sell your home prior, maybe you have someone to live with, and you can get the cash, or you do have that dreaded home sale contingency. But you could use that money to pay off your debt and put yourself in a better position to avoid the payment shock. So in this example, you're at a 3% rate, and today's rate 6.75. If you purchased a home for $500,000 6 years ago, you put 20% down, that same home's probably worth about $700,000 today. Let's say you owe $343. Your cost to sell and commissions and stuff is about 35 grand. You have 317 in equity, and the closing costs are 12 grand, which honestly seems a little bit high, but we'll go with it. So we're at 305,000 total equity that you walk away with when you sell your home. Now you're moving up. That new home is worth 850,000. You're putting 305 down. Your new loan amount is 545. So you're 145,000 higher than you were before, but that's a monthly payment increase of about $2,500 because of the higher loan balance and the higher interest rate. So someone will see that and not want to move up because of it. But what about if you have debt, like I mentioned before? In this example, it shows that monthly deficit in payment is $2,500, but you're putting down 300 grand. You have a lot of equity. If you go up to 80%, take a higher loan amount, you can do that and still not have mortgage insurance. So in this example, you have 100 grand in debt, including a car loan, $2,900 in monthly payments. What if you use that 100 grand to wipe out all your debts and take a higher loan amount? Now the payment shock is only $286 different between your mortgage because you don't have any other debt. So it really puts yourself in a better position, instead of taking that higher loan amount, especially when you're going to be able to refinance it to a lower rate later and probably wipe this out to almost zero, where you're in better shape altogether. And the final slide I want to show is just once you get out there, once you've made these decisions, you had your consultations, there's going to be competition. You're going to be bidding over asking for the property. It's going to happen. So in this example, it shows a $459,000 property, and you have to bid $10,000 over asking to get it. So your total bid's $469,000. This is data from Black Knight. They're a huge analytical company that forecasts real estate and what it's worth. Shows that you'll break even in 5 months. That's based on a 3 to 4% appreciation. In 5 years, that same property has appreciated 90 grand. So, would you pay 10 grand more today to have 90 grand in 5 years? I certainly would. And we can run this based on whatever property, market, location you have. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but it is an eye opener, and it's a tool we can use to help you decide if it makes sense, how high above asking you should bid based on, certain circumstances. So that's kind of all we're getting into for today, unless you guys want to jump in and add anything else to that. I know it's like drinking through a fire hose. It's a ton of information.
No, Greg, thank you for that information. And just looking over like some of the data from the past year, a couple of years, is that people are waiting for homes to go into foreclosure or for short sales to occur, and they think that the market's going to crash. And that's the furthest thing from the truth, just because of looking at your slide, that today, homeowners have more equity in their home than they ever have had in the past. And that's also why, today we're not going to have what happened in 2008. And it's really hard for our clients or people that we talk to educate them just on some of the things that you said. The builders stopped building. The, millennials are, either first-time home buyers or move-up buyers. The baby boomers are still hanging around. So all of these things, and because of the amount of equity that we have, that, foreclosures, this, sky is falling. It's not going to happen. And, we have clients right now, I think, what do we have? We have one client that paid over ask this week. Mm-hmm. The home that they sold, they got over ask, $50,000. They got over, like they listed it and they got it, somebody went up by $50,000. They paid over ask. And then our clients, they paid, what did they pay? $20,000 over ask. Yeah. We have a closing on Friday. They paid $13,000 over ask. I don't think Quince paid over ask.
No, but it was
No.
off market, so.
But it was off market. So Miranda was able to secure off market property for our clients. And then we have all these conversations like what Greg was saying. Does it make sense for our client to pay over ask? And when you look at it in 5 months, you're at your break even point, and this is the home that you want to be in for the next 5 to 7 years, then it does make sense. So, no, thank you so much. I think it was really great information that you shared with our community.
Awesome. I'm glad I could help out. We'll spread the word, get people buying.
Yes, thank you so much, Greg. No, I really appreciate all this information, and we're just continuing trying to educate our friends, family, clients, and the more information, the better. Just to help people make an informed decision.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.